All right, folks, listen up. We have Washington going into another week of fiscal drama, bureaucratic plot twists, and economic theater. We've got a federal government shutdown that is stretching well into its second week, EPA furloughs, DHS reassignments, and an IRS back pay meltdown that's got accountants crying into their spreadsheets. The CBO also just dropped a bombshell, a $1.8 trillion deficit for 2025. Basically, a sequel no one asked for. Meanwhile, Trump's new tariffs are reshaping global trade, federal revenues, and your next procurement strategy, whether you like it or not. We're going to break down how the tariffs, deficits, and shutdowns are colliding, why DOGE's government efficiency push is already looking more like meme than actual miracle, and what it means for federal contractors, agencies, and the business leaders trying to navigate this chaos. If you're in the government market, this is going to be your cheat sheet for staying ahead without needing a PhD in fiscal policy or a bottle of Advil. So grab your coffee, charge your laptops, and let's decode what's really going on inside Washington's trillion-dollar circus. First off, shutdown blues. It's week 2 for the federal shutdown, and the ripple effects are spreading faster than a continuing resolution rumor. At the EPA, the agencies finally ran out of carryover funds and started furloughing employees after stretching the budget like the last piece of printer paper in the supply closet. They tried to keep operations going as long as possible, but even environmental resilience has its limits. Meanwhile, over at Homeland Security, things are kind of weird, right? DHS employees are facing mandatory reassignments, meaning workers are being shuffled across divisions to keep essential operations running, even if that means cybersecurity analysts are suddenly helping manage border security paperwork. The morale, well, about as high as a TSA liquid bottle limit. And at the IRS, well, the shutdowns hit like a refund delay on steroids. The agency has shuttered most of its operations, sent home thousands of workers, and in true bureaucratic plot twist fashion, backtracked on its back pay guarantee for furloughed employees. So yes, the people responsible for collecting the government's money aren't getting theirs. You literally cannot make this up. But not everyone is going to get to stay home and clean their inbox. Some furloughed workers are being called back in, not for defense or security, but for data. That's right. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is recalling employees to finish the September inflation report because without it, the government can't calculate cost of living adjustments for Social Security recipients. What this means is the economy is on pause, but the COLA train still runs on time. Because if seniors don't get their checks adjusted, Congress is really going to start hearing about it and heads are going to roll. Meanwhile, over in fiscal Fantasyland, also known as the Congressional Budget Office, the final numbers are in and they're kind of scary. The federal deficit for 2025 hit $1.8 trillion, almost identical to last year, despite, and this is despite, historic tariff hikes and promises of spending cuts. The math still does not love us back, and it is not mathing. The CBO says the U.S. brought in $5.2 trillion in revenue, thanks in part to higher tariffs, but spent more than $7 trillion. And for the first time, interest payments on the national debt topped $1 trillion. So yes, one out of every 5 tax dollars now goes into paying interest. Think of it as America's version of a minimum credit card payment. This is not good stuff. Then let's get into tariffs, right? Washington's favorite new revenue diet. Trump's new tariff regime has pushed rates to the highest level since the 1930s. That's old news. Everybody's heard that. But with an average 18% duty on all imports, the good news is this. Customs revenue more than doubled to $195 billion this year. The bad news, that's still less than 4% of total federal income, barely enough to make a dent in the $7 trillion spending habit that we have today. Economists say that the impact has been modest. Inflation rose just slightly to about 2.7%, and GDP growth slowed to 1.2%. So far, the great trade revolution looks more like, well, a light jog. Most companies are still absorbing the costs to avoid scaring off customers, but that won't last forever. Expect prices for goods, from furniture to electronics, to keep creeping up as those costs get passed down the chain. And that big Trump promise, replacing income taxes with tariffs, the math doesn't add up. Even if tariffs were maxed out, they still bring in only a fraction, a small fraction of what income taxes generate from the middle class. So tariffs are making money, but think side hustle, not sustainable career. And when we talk about not sustainable, let's talk a little bit about DOGE. Remember Elon Musk's much hyped about Department of Government Efficiency, aka DOGE? Well, he said it would save $2 trillion by trimming federal waste. Instead, the numbers are in. Spending excluding interest actually rose by $220 billion. The only savings, quote unquote savings, came from a one-time accounting adjustment tied to student loans. In other words, DOGE fetched a headline, not a balance sheet victory. Much deficit? No. Wow. DOJ is also having some trauma going on right now, too. And just when you thought the fiscal headlines were over, the political theater dialed it up to 11. The Justice Department has indicted New York Sitting Attorney General Letitia James on bank fraud charges, following pressure from the White House. Democrats are calling it political revenge, given that James previously led the civil fraud case against Trump. Justice officials who resisted charging her were replaced, and the new U.S. attorney quickly moved the case forward. Both sides claim the moral high ground, but to everyone else, it's clear. Washington's weaponization narrative just got another chapter. What is happening right now, whether it's a legal tit for tat or whether this is an actual type of indictment, we're going to see and find out. For business leaders and contractors, all this chaos translates into one thing: uncertainty. Agencies are frozen, spending is paused, and contracting officers are harder to reach than a fully funded infrastructure project. But history says this: listen up. Once the government flips the switch back on, there's going to be a surge in government contracting, pent-up spending, reactivated procurements, and a rush to meet fiscal deadlines. The ball keeps on rolling. They need to hit this goal. So keep your proposals ready, your compliance tight, and your patience infinite. Because when Washington stops spinning, the contract's going to start flying. So that's right happening going on right now. This is the federal circus, and the shutdown is spreading. Tariffs are ticking along. Deficits are ballooning. DOGE is sleeping. And DOJ, well, it's biting. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. If this helped you or gave you any great information. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and we're going to try to answer them. Until then, keep your invoices clean, your humor dry, and your outlook slightly more optimistic than the CBO's debt forecast.